Welcome to The Human Experience, a podcast about the stories we live out every day and the importance of championing the vulnerability and courage of the storyteller. I'm your host, Jennifer Peterkin, and it was through my own lived story of experiencing domestic violence that this podcast was created. By traveling the globe and interviewing each guest in person, I am convinced now more than ever that stories have the power to change the world. Thank you for being here. In a world full of noise, to listen with intention is an act of resistance. Kirsten.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for doing this. It's been like 2 years in the making.
Yes, you mentioned it to me 2 years ago when I met you.
Yeah.
No, actually, I met you before that, but when we were in Morocco together.
Okay. Yes, that's right. That's right. I don't think I had launched yet when we were in Kenya. I was doing interviews, but I hadn't launched it yet. So thank you for letting me come invade your space, your beautiful home in London, and
Pleasure.
you can sit down and talk about your story. So, as you've alluded to or mentioned already, we've traveled together. I've been on 3 of your trips. I crashed one of them, the end of one of them, and then, intentionally signed up for 2 of them and have another one that I'm signed up for next year.
You're a groupie.
I am a groupie. I'm a Kirsten/Artist Nomad groupie. But yeah, I love the way that you travel. I love the trips that you lead. I'm so honored to travel with you and to be a part of that. But your story is huge. And so I'm just so excited to sit down and talk to you a little bit about how you got where you are and what brought you to this moment in life.
Love it. Let's do it.
Awesome. So usually how I start this is if I ask you where your story begins, where would you start that?
Oh, that's such an interesting question. When people ask me where I'm from, I just look at them and say, I don't really know how to answer that question.
Yeah.
Because and my company's called Artist Nomad for a reason.
Yeah.
My life has been very nomadic.
Mm.
Where I was born and my life started was in Texas. I was born in Houston, raised in Katy, Texas when it was still a small town, cow pastures.
Mm.
And now I think it's like an extension of Houston. But when we lived there, the closest grocery store was almost like a 25 or 30-minute drive from our house. So it was quite remote at the time. And I say my story started there, even though it's not just because it's like where I'm from, but I feel like that's where my awareness of God's presence in the world started, even though I didn't know how to explain what that was. I have strong memories of encountering God's presence all the way back to preschool.
Oh, wow.
And I fell in love with nature as a young child. And in elementary school in 3rd grade, I will never forget having to create my coat of arms, which I'm like, why did we do that? But I remember on the coat of arms, you had to put your, long-term, lifelong goal. And guess what I put? To travel the world.
Did you?
I did. So I think that's why I said, like, my story began in that young era, that who I am, I was an artist, and I took art classes in Katy up to 2nd grade, like 2nd, 3rd grade maybe is when I stopped, because no one was an artist in the suburbs of Houston. And so after that, it wasn't something you pursued. I was told I should pursue being a lawyer or something like that. So I didn't pursue my artistic side, but I knew I was an artist because I loved painting and I loved those art classes. And I always, anytime we had like a book report or anything, would be ridiculous and go way above and beyond whatever the assignment was, because I wanted to create an experience for the class to journey with me, which would usually include costumes and music and big displays. And I'm not exaggerating. This was not the assignment. So this is like why I say my story started when I was young, because I don't actually think, decades later, I'm that much different. I think I am who I am, and I can just see the influences along the way that have helped to shape and point me down a path that I kept leaning into and taking next steps in and taking risks in life to keep leaning into this love of nature, this exploring of God's presence in the world and exploring this world that He's created in general.
Wow. I love that.
And my husband is the one that helped me rekindle my creative side.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's been our marriage of 28 years that I rediscovered that I was creative and kind of had put it on hold for maybe 20 years before that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what did you then pursue in terms of what did you think your career was going to be after you kind of shoved your art side under the
Yeah.
table?
I know. Well, I grew up in one of those very like upper middle class suburban white communities of Texas. So I wasn't exposed to very much in regards to people or ways of life that were different. And so my immediate worldview was quite small, yet I had that yearning and desire to see the world. So that was there, but I didn't actually even know what. But I would read and I would look, like, back then, but pre-internet, pre any of these things. So it was like going to the library and checking out encyclopedias and like really things like that. So it was kind of nerdy in that way, like very curious about, all those things. And I just feel like when it came time to decide to go to college, I picked Baylor University. I went and saw it, but it was kind of funny because it's a Christian university. I didn't actually know anybody that had gone there. But when I went to go visit, it really, and Waco was like not impressive. So this was like in 1990 that I first visited Waco. And I was like, oh my. And I think at that time, the part of Waco that I saw was like really not impressive. Waco today is completely different. Largely due to Baylor growing alongside Chip and Joanna Gaines, like influencing it. But also a lot of other things have happened. So it's actually become a very influential small city. But back in the early days, it was not being drawn to a cute college town. But just when I went to Baylor, I felt like God was calling me there if I couldn't even explain it. And so I went there. And what do girls do coming from, my background? You Most of my friends were either going to do accounting or they did social work or a teacher. So I studied to be a teacher.
Okay.
Which is super funny because I went all the way through. And when it came to my student teaching, and I did my student teaching in Waco at a junior high, I was like, oh no, this is not for me. It's a classroom's too small for me. I felt like that world and just having a small, it was not enough. Like I loved teaching and I loved like learning, but it felt like way too limiting for me. So I kind of knew before I graduated that wasn't what I was going to do. And so I graduated from Baylor, and the day after I graduated, I got on an airplane and went to India. And volunteered with Mother Teresa for the summer. But how that came about was actually during my Baylor time. I went to Baylor not really knowing why I was going, and roomed with another friend who's not a professor at Baylor. And she was, very studious and amazing. She's a tax professor. So she's like super uber smart. And she and I got along great. We both did the sorority life and all of that. I was like sorority rush chairman. And then all of a sudden, my world changed my junior year. So my parents separated when I was at university. My sister had been at home when I started university. And when I was a freshman, she came to visit me. And she decided she wanted to follow me to Baylor when she graduated and came. But when my sister came, she had been going through, without going into detail, a really difficult time because she was the one that was at home when my parents separated, and my mom did not handle that well. And I think my mom's depression impacted my sister, and my dad disappearing really impacted her, and it affected her health. And so when she came to Baylor, I realized she was coming, and it was my responsibility as the big sister to care for her. So Baylor became my time of figuring out how to hold my family together that had completely fallen apart. And I needed to be at a safe place where I was gifted still my best friends in the world during that time. So my roommates from college and I are still in a text chain. And I've been living in Europe 4 years. I haven't seen them much in 4 years, but prior to living here, we would almost see each other yearly. And there's a group of Baylor friends who are all in the same sorority that would see each other yearly. And I think people stay in touch with college friends, but we had a unique connection because when we pledged joining a sorority, we all pledged what at the time was like a party sorority, a popular party sorority. And somehow we all ended up choosing it together and realized when we were there, we were not the norm. And somehow we all got in it. And we used that as an opportunity just to make a positive impact on that sorority at the time. And several of us just felt like led to just, honestly, invest and love all the women that were involved. And it was really profound. The relationships that were built, the friendships that were built, the conversations that happened, and the lifelong continued impact that's had on me and several people. So I think what was initially just like a social group meant so much more for that core group of like 12 of us that were in that together. And those friendships are the ones that also came alongside me and my sister during this like difficult time. So my Baylor experience, where most people around me had a lot of money and could afford to go to Baylor, was when my parents divorced and my sister ended up coming. We were dirt poor. We had nothing. Our dad had left us and he disappeared. And then all of a sudden one day when he filed the official divorce, because they had joint tax returns, all of his debt, which we weren't aware of, went on to my mom. And so I went through what I think is the start of why I became such an advocate for women, because I saw the impact that had on my mom and on us with like no rights, no ability to get out of the situation. And we lost our home. We lost everything. So while I'm at Baylor, taking care of my sister, trying to help her like manage this, worried about my mom, who at the time became severely depressed. She actually became suicidal. And so there would be times I'd be on the phone with her, praying for her, talking to her, helping her hold on to life because she was so sad that my dad had left and all this financial burden had fallen on us. And my roommates would be sitting there just holding my hand through the whole conversation because I didn't know if I'd talk to her again. If I hung up the phone, what was she going to do? It was that dramatic. So it's a very painful time. And when the reality of this financial situation fell on us, we had to open up our home. We had to foreclose on the house that I had grown up in, and we had to open up our home and sell everything in it and use what money we made from that to keep enough for like a small apartment, loaded up a U-Haul, attached it to my mom's old Cadillac. It's like a really old Cadillac to the back of this U-Haul and drove it one summer, my junior summer year, from Texas to Pennsylvania. I moved in with my Aunt Jackie because we had nowhere to go. So in technical terms, I was homeless. We were homeless going to Baylor.
Wow.
And when we showed up at my Aunt Jackie, she had never had children, but she always welcomed us as like her kids. And so she just said, come move in with me. So we had a place to go. We had an Aunt Jackie. And I didn't know if I'd ever return to Baylor. I didn't know what was going to happen. I just knew life was hard. And long story short, my mom called Baylor and said, the girls cannot return because it was in the summer. And so what had happened? And not shortly after she made that call, Baylor called back and said, we have an anonymous donor that will scholarship your girls to finish.
Wow.
And so my sister and I were able to, I don't actually understand if it was a loan or a scholarship. It's anonymous. I don't actually know. My mom my mom just dealt with it. All I know is that we got to return to Baylor and finish. Couldn't afford a sorority, but they were like, come in it, we'll cover your fees. I had to work 3 jobs and take full-time classes. My Aunt Jackie helped cover the rent for a part of it. I didn't always have food. So I've actually learned about food insecurity at Baylor. It was just like the whole thing is such an interesting part of what formed me. And sometimes when my shelf in our apartment was empty, my roommates, I would open it up to figure out what I could eat, and they would have filled it with something.
Wow.
And one time we were going to go to they called it the fire dance, which was like everybody wore red and the girls were just to ask the boys to go to the sorority dance. I didn't go to anything because I couldn't afford to do anything like that. I was just trying to finish my college career, take care of my sister, support my mom during this, and be very responsible, obviously. And I remember telling my roommates, they were like, why aren't you going? And they were like, you should ask so-and-so. I was like, you guys, I'm not going to ask him, but I also, I can't afford the dumb dance and the T-shirts. I can't do that. Plus, I don't have a red dress. I was just like laughing at them. And then my friend's boyfriend at the time, who's now her husband, my roommate Jessica, her husband Todd, was like, Kirst, he's from Arkansas. He was like, surely you got a red dress in that closet. I was like, I do not, Todd. He was upstairs with us, and I was so irritated. I was like, you guys, I just like I feel shame. I'm like, you guys are shaming me. I was like, how many times do I have to say I can't afford this? Like, it's not going to change. I was getting irritated, but he kept pushing. So in all my drama, he's like, prove it. Show me your closet. He's like totally. So I opened it up, and he had bought me a dress.
Oh, Todd.
I know, sweet Todd. And I just share all that because I firsthand experienced the drama of being women and having the actions of a man impact you, losing your rights and everything you own, having somebody welcome you during a time of need to be a bridge, having dear friends fill in the gaps that believed in me and were there for me, and to not be, so I didn't fall through the cracks. And it was even those small gestures have stayed with me like over these decades because it helped me know that that's what women need today all around the world, is that there's so many women living on the margins who are facing so many struggles coming out of violence, facing poverty, war, immigration, discrimination, whatever it might be. And sometimes you just need an advocate. Someone to be that bridge to walk with you and believe in you and your potential, your God-given potential, to help you get from point A to B so that then you can thrive and be all God created you to be. And those were the situations that helped me get through like a very challenging season. And if I didn't have those people I just mentioned, I would be in a completely different place today. But getting on the other side of it gave me the courage to live very openly, not worry when we don't have a lot of finances or things aren't like cushy for me and my husband. I married my best friend from Baylor, by the way. And to be able for us as a couple to say yes, as we have felt led in life, to go wherever life God leads you to go and give of what we have to serve. It's been the most life-giving. We have chosen not to take steps that would lead to maybe more wealth, health, and success in a traditional standard, but more what we feel is truly life-giving. And thankfully, because I married someone that I love to hang out with and love being around. He's my best friend. We did not date in college because I thought I was going to be like a missionary humanitarian worker and he was going to be a filmmaker in Hollywood, and those two things didn't go together. So we just established we should just be best friends and never cross that line.
Okay.
And when I was returning from that trip to India, he picked me up from the airport at the gate because you could do that back then. And I was so sick on the whole plane ride home from India, literally throwing up the whole time, borrowing bags, the little bags from my neighbors. Like it was that kind of a long plane ride. It was terrible.
Gosh.
And I had been caught in a monsoon before I boarded the plane. So let's just say I wasn't looking good. But somehow when he saw me and I saw him, we had butterflies and we kind of knew like, I love you.
Yeah.
And we got married not that long after that, a few months later. Like we fell hard for each other, but we knew each other well.
Yeah.
And so we've been married 28 and a half years and have moved 14 times.
Wow.
But every time it's not because we're fickle or like saying we're like unhappy or just, it's because we just always together known this is where we're being called, this is what we're supposed to do, or this is what we need to sacrifice in order to say yes to something else. And, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
It's amazing.
So, but it all intertwines in those like Baylor days.
Yeah.
And so I really still think that those early 20s are some of the most formative. Like my journey starts with the childhood, but then it was those formative, what I chose to do in my college days and who I chose to be friends with had such an impact on who I am.
Yeah.
But then I busted out of the Baylor bubble because once those people invested in me and I saw God provide, I started being drawn to wanting, like I said, to see, well, how do I give back to others? Because people have been so generous with me. And that was the year a couple that lived in Waco started Church Under the Bridge in Waco. And I just started showing up. There'd be like 5 of us, 5 homeless people, them and maybe somebody else, and me and a few college students. And that now is Mission Waco, which is a vibrant ministry that is doing all kinds of crazy things with like farming and cafes and school programs and micro enterprise and a village for veterans and so much ministry. So it was birthed in the early 90s when I was there. And the female founder of that became a mentor of mine.
Wow.
And so she had a profound impact on me. And it was with that organization, I went to India the day after I graduated. They took a group of college students to come see the world and experience poverty firsthand. And so I toured India with them to learn about just the realities of poverty and the struggles of poverty and how to reconcile that as a Christian and what is our response. And then my friend Brooke and I stayed for the rest of the summer in Calcutta because we didn't have a plan. We just went and had a return ticket to stay like an extra, I want to say we stayed an extra like, I don't know, a month or more.
Wow.
And we just decided Calcutta because after everybody left, we were in Delhi and said goodbye to the group. We looked at each other and we're like, where are we supposed to go back to now? Like, we didn't have a plan. This is so funny that you would do that. Like, no computers, no cell phone. We're like, but we had a business card for this one ministry we had picked up in Calcutta that worked with street kids and with people coming off of drugs and homelessness in Calcutta. And we were really impacted by them. They were called the Pavamani family. And we were like, I think we're supposed to go back and serve with the Pavamani. So we called them at a payphone in Delhi. You guys, this is so funny when I think about like how it rolls today versus back then.
Yeah.
And we're like, hi, do you remember us? I'm sure they didn't remember us, but the hospitality that I've received is why my husband and I are like, try to have an open door policy. They just said, yes, come. And the next day we got on a plane back to Calcutta. They picked us up from the airport and they took care of us. And we volunteered with their ministry, which ran like, I taught at like a Compassion International school. And then we volunteered with Mother Teresa. We stayed in like the guest housing for all the volunteers with Mother Teresa. And that was life-changing for both of us. It was pretty amazing.
Wow.
But all those experiences kind of worked together in a way that formed me. There's more, but maybe I should pause.
That's amazing. I mean, I'm trying to imagine. I went to India with you earlier this year and everything was completely planned out. I can't imagine. I also had my cell phone with me. So if anything were to happen, I had a device. I can't imagine just being like, yeah, I'm going to stay in India for an extra month.
We just only booked a return with no plans and no contacts. I mean, it's actually shocking when I think about it.
Yeah.
But kind of funny.
Now, is this your only extended time in India, or have you done more than that?
Well, I've been to India 24 times.
I know you've been to India a lot, but
during that.
During
during college, actually, what happened in the 2 years is that summer after we got that scholarship, I was able to return to Baylor. And later that year, I was, at the end of my junior year, and I was a part of a student ministry and was mentored by the leader of that ministry. And she really taught me about the power of prayer. And I learned a lot about prayer from her. And they were talking about needing people to move to Estonia from Baylor because the Iron Curtain had fallen a few years earlier and they had started ministry to students in Estonia. And that first year had started, they needed somebody to go. And I was like, Estonia, Shmonia. I didn't even know where Estonia was. I'd never even heard of it. I was thinking about a sorority meeting I had. I was like so not paying attention to this meeting. It was like one of those like almost like a leadership board meeting.
Yeah.
I was just like looking at my watch, ready to go. And they passed around printed photos, because we did that back then, of the students in Estonia. And when I can't even explain it, but when a photo of these students got to me and I was just going to flip through it, I couldn't stop. Like I had to hold on to it. And this overwhelming realization that I was supposed to go came over me. This is in April. And they were looking for somebody to go in September. And again, remember my financial situation? So I'm just sitting here thinking, what? Like, what is this nudge, this like burden, this like calling, this like, it was like overwhelming. Like I knew. And I knew that I couldn't leave that meeting without going to that mentor and saying, I think it's me. And so when I went, you can imagine she couldn't even process that I would even say that because we didn't understand how would it even be possible.
Yeah.
And so I just said yes, but I knew that there would have to be provision to make that possible. And it meant I would miss a year of school, wouldn't graduate with my friends. I'd have to leave my sister for a year, leave my mom for a year, move to Estonia, which I didn't even know where it was at the time, and then come back and finish. So that doesn't make any sense, right? Like, that's not a logical thing to do. But by July, all of the money, which was 20-something K, had been raised by the parents of my sorority sisters.
Oh, my word.
I sent out one letter and people gave. I can't even explain it. And so I had to say yes. And I was on a plane the end of August and moved to Estonia.
Wow.
It was pretty wild. So I put Baylor on hold, which you could do. And I took a photo of my sister, who was still health-wise not doing well. But I had a photo of her when she was healthy and just put it by my nightstand and just prayed for her every day that she'd be healthy again. And I really felt like I was also supposed to leave because my sister and my mom had become so dependent upon me to get through that trauma that we went through. And I knew that if I left them, then they would have to find the strength in themselves, and I wasn't going to be available every day.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually the best thing for them. So they both largely healed, like got on the other side of things that year. Not totally, but like headed towards that. And my roommates that I told you about, they were there for my sister during that time that I was gone. And when I returned, I roomed with my sister my last year. So it actually worked out really beautiful. And that year was an incredible year of just being in a country that had been closed from the world that was open again. And just the like eagerness and the hungerness for young people to discover the meaning of life and what they wanted to do with their lives, because they now had choices about where they wanted to go, what they wanted to do, what they wanted to believe. It was utterly fascinating and challenging because I didn't have answers, but I sure enjoyed journeying with them, and I'm still in touch with many of them.
Wow.
And twice during that year, we had to go to St. Petersburg once and then Moscow, I guess 3 times, Moscow twice for like group meetings. And it was the former Soviet Union. So everybody that was involved in student outreach from Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan to Latvia, Lithuania, Russia, Estonia, we all came. So that's a lot of different cultures coming together, which I loved, feeding that like wanting to see the world side of me. And we would do these conferences. I don't remember one thing about those conferences except for meeting my other big mentor. So, I've mentioned 3 mentors, all in college. The one with the student ministry that taught me about prayer, the one with Mission Waco that taught me about God's heart for the poor, and then Charmaine. Charmaine was the leader. She and her husband were like the directors and the leaders of the entire region. And so they would speak, and she would like to all of us. And when I would hear her speak, I thought, I'm supposed to speak like that someday. Like I remember thinking like, I want to be like her. She's amazing. She's maybe 8 years older than me, not that much older than me, but she seemed like so much more. Maybe she's like 5 years older than me. She just seemed like so much further down the line than me. She's like 8 years. But she would always take the intentional time to say, Kirsten, let's have a coffee. And that has impacted how I know one-on-one time matters, because she would take an hour or 2 out of her time at the conference to sit with me, and she would just speak into my life, and things that she said in my little 20-something, early 20s impacted the direction my life went. And those just few rare things. We would be sitting in meetings and she'd pass me a note with just like a little message that was on her heart. And it would be things that I can refer back to, sparked like I knew that was something I was supposed to say yes to in my life. So she was majorly influential by just speaking into my life, believing in me, and showing me that you can do big things as a woman and be in a big leadership position and live in different parts of the world doing it and all of that. Didn't see her, 20 years later, I'm living in Austin, Texas, walking in to a conference, and I hear this, Kirsten. And I turn around, and it was Charmaine. Hadn't seen her in 20 years.
Wow.
And I just said, Charmaine? Just like processing this person. So I did not attend the conference. I just sat with her for the whole day, and we caught up on life. And what was so fun is that now we were peers. We both have 2 kids the same age. And long story short, she and her husband have become like very good friends of me and my husband. And they have come to visit us when we lived in Portugal. We have gone to visit them in California several times. And God like has kept some of those relationships in my life like that. So she taught me about seeing the world and believing big things, taking risks. One taught me about prayer, one taught me about God's heart for the poor. And all of that was in my early 20s and forms like who I am today.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting? You've known me a little bit, but I wanted to share that because I thought it'd be interesting for you to hear when you asked me like where my story started. I think it was there because I don't know that I would just keep building off of what I started learning and like seeing and identifying with. I learned about St. Francis when I was in college, when I was with Mission Waco. We watched Brother, Sun, Sister Moons, Frank Zeffirelli's movie from the 70s, which is like the most 70s movie you've ever saw. But it's on St. Francis. And I fell in love with this idea of what it could look like to follow Jesus the way of Francis, because Francis identified with God through creation and through the marginalized, and he was an artist. It all made sense to me.
Yeah.
But it was Catholic, so I didn't really, I didn't think anything of it. Well, just to fast forward, I'm basically a Franciscan in the Anglican Church now. I'm in the third order. I'm actually a postulate to be noviced, hopefully in the next few months. But it's become part of my spiritual formation. But it started there. So when you ask that, it's very layered, confusing perhaps, but all intertwined. And the moral of the story is if you're open and looking and paying attention to where you are at the moment, I do absolutely think that there are things being revealed to you every day through people and circumstances and creation where it's, God, higher power, whatever you want to call it, directing your path and leading you. And it's up to you if you say yes to that and lean into that. But when you do, then the world becomes this like magical, wonderful place, no matter what challenges come your way, because you can see this bigger force guiding your path and caring for you and caring for others. And I don't know, it's made life like amazing. And my husband and I both follow like that kind of path and that way of thinking together, which has given us a really strong marriage as well.
I love that. I just think it's really special too, because I think a lot of us feel like what we learn in our late teens, early 20s is kind of, for lack of a better way of saying this, throwaway stuff. It's, the stuff that you like learn through and grow through, but it's not a time you necessarily return to because it's not your necessarily smartest era of life. And so it's kind of, they're experiences, but they're not the experiences. And I think it's really interesting to talk about your biggest experiences or the things that have shaped you most happening then because it built upon each other, and that's not to say that other things haven't happened that have been extremely important in your life, but you can draw back to those experiences in college in your early 20s. So yeah, I think it's really great to know that it doesn't have to be. There is no perfect time. There is no rhyme or reason. It's just when you're paying attention, when God brings things into your life, those are the moments.
I absolutely agree. I think what I have found is that being a Westerner, we have so much stuff and so much busyness and so much striving that we aren't able to slow down enough to experience that presence. And my saying, noticing leads to wonder.
Yeah.
And wonder leads to gratitude.
Yes.
And I really do believe that's true, but it requires stopping, slowing down so that you can pay attention and notice. When I even do that for myself, if I'm stressed, if I even give myself permission to slow down and pay attention and notice and name what is bothering me, it is like the first step in releasing that. If I don't do that, it just gets deeper and harder. So it's a part of like living in the moment, in the presence of God in the moment. You have that gift of life today. You have that gift of the people before you, seeing everyone as beloved and important that you encounter, that every encounter is an opportunity to show kindness and blessing, no matter if you agree with that person or know that person or whatever it might be. They have value. And to see the connectedness we have to this creation all around us and all the stories and the ways that we can learn so much about life and renewal and redemption and regeneration and all the things are all around us every single day. It's just so much magic and wonder that we miss because we're so busy. And that's what I try to do with my retreats and my tours is invite people to have their world opened up again. And we do it through travel by going to another culture or spending time in nature. But really my overarching desire is it's a gift, an invitation to just be present during this time that you said yes to coming with me on a journey for whatever it might be for you, but to not worry about what you left or where you're going after, but to be fully present and allow the experiences to hold you and shape you and open you.
Yeah. It is. It is transformative, to be sure, if you allow it to be. Absolutely.
And if you don't get sick like you did.
When you were in India.
That took you out of it for a little bit.
It did. But you know what? It was still transformative for sure. Maybe in ways I wasn't expecting. But
this is the lesson Jen learned.
Yeah.
Don't eat raw vegetables.
Yes.
She was warned. Those that didn't listen to the warning all got food poisonings. If you ever go to India, no matter how good and tempted you are to eat that salad or raw vegetables, please don't.
Yeah, please don't. I am the cautionary tale. So what happens? You get back from India, you finish college?
Yeah, I moved in with my sister.
Yep.
Well, so I got back from Estonia, moved in with my sister for a year, finished college, went to India.
Yeah.
Came back, and I started interning with that inner city mission Waco.
Okay.
But that didn't last long.
Okay.
Because Brand and I fell hard. And he bought me a one-way ticket to California. He was starting his music video career.
Okay.
And we got married in California a few months later.
And how long were you in California?
Before we got married?
No. Together.
Let's see. We started off in like Berkeley, California, and Oakland, California for the first 5 years of our marriage. And then we ended up, as his film career took off, with mostly music videos and commercials. I did a lot of the art direction for him in wardrobe in those early days, which was super fun. We ended up moving to Los Angeles because he signed with a film company that wanted to represent him. And we lived in LA for 9 years.
Wow.
And LA, we lived in Silver Lake at the early days of Silver Lake kind of becoming what it is today. And then we lived in Hollywood, accidentally planted a church. That's a whole nother story. And he had accidentally became a pastor of that church and had to step out of directing for a couple of years.
Oh, wow.
It was a wild season. So we moved into Hollywood into one of the first renovated condos on the Walk of Fame in the heart of Hollywood.
Oh, wow.
Right across from the Arclight Theater, which is now closed since COVID. But it's like a famous theater. And we were right above the Michael Jackson star. And we had Snoop Dogg above us whenever he was recording at a studio nearby. We always knew he was there because he had some big bodyguards hanging out in the garage. We would go to our car, we're like, Snoop's here tonight. And then below us was Nicole, the homeless woman. So we had 2 kids. We were the only family in this apartment unit on the Walk of Fame with Snoop Dogg above and Nicole below. And I think the most amazing part of that journey was having the kids there and figuring out how are we going to do life as a family. We would walk just around the corner. The church was planted and moved around a few different spaces and then landed at that time at the Pacific Theater, which was on Hollywood Boulevard in the part of Hollywood that had not been renovated. So it was a little rough around the edges. Literally, when you walk out of the church, the store across the street was called Temptations.
Okay.
Ironically, but and when we were giving communion at the church, it was mostly like 80% young people who were artists or in the film industry trying to find their way. But there were also homeless and famous that came. So you could be giving communion to a homeless person, and then it could be Zooey Deschanel or Ryan Gosling, and then a bunch of like starving artists in between. So it was reaching both the fameless and the unknown in a very interesting way, just because it was like the first kind of, I guess, church like that. There's a whole bunch now in LA, but at the time it was like the first. And we didn't have any idea what we were doing. We just started gathering. It was like an accident, which is another story. But during that time with the kids there, it was super interesting to figure out, like, what does life look like in the middle of Hollywood which is not cool to say you're a Christian.
Mm.
And why are people coming? Like, where are they coming from and what's happening? And how did we call Brandon the reluctant pastor? Because we were like, he so did not sign up for this. And he was like, this is suicide for my film career. What is happening? And he was like, I don't want to be your effing pastor. And he would tell people. And they were like, that's why we want you to be our pastor. I mean, it was like the funniest season of our lives. So we finally said, okay, fine. And we ended up embracing it. I will never forget, though, when we were like kids, when they would go to night, they would ask a lot about Nicole, who was sleeping in this white lawn chair below us every night. We were in like the second, like a floor up. So they could see her. And before they would go to bed, we would pray for her every night. And eventually they wanted to meet her. And so we took our little chihuahua and we would go down there from time to time and say hi to her. That's how we knew her name. She was like 65. She used to be a nurse. And it just made me think of my mom, who was a nurse and like not quite that old, but like 5 years younger than her, and how somehow she had fallen through the cracks. And I told you that story and was like, somehow she did. And she's ended up, and she was waiting for someone every night to come pick her up. So some mental wellness had kicked in. But she had had a career. She had had a family. And somehow ended up on her own, and was the reason she sat in that white lawn chair under the light at the corner of Sunset and Vine is because she felt safe. And so she slept upright at 65 in that white lawn chair every night. So eventually, because of the kids, she grew to trust us. She didn't trust people. And none of the homeless outreaches had ever been able to work to help her. But because of the kids and us, they were able to help connect her. And she eventually got into housing.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing.
But I think it was formative in my kids, because I feel like it was them praying for her, them initiating meeting her, and then her relationship with them that eventually led to being able to connect her where she would trust the service that we invited to come meet her and help her get off the streets. Isn't that wild?
That's amazing.
I know. And then when the kids would be walking to the elevator, it'd be like, Mom, somebody's cooking broccoli again, because there was a whole lot of pot smoking going on all around us. And at the time, it was not legal. And we were like, yeah, people like broccoli a lot. It was really funny. I know. It was such a season. It was like a reality TV show all around us. Pretty funny, huh?
Yeah.
But we moved from there to Texas because when my husband eventually felt like, he had helped to start that church and it was time to step back into film, and he didn't really know why and what that meant. And so we just handed over the reins to the next person. So again, not because he had a job or had any idea, but we just knew, we just know together when it's time. And so after 4 years, he did. He also was like, Hollywood is a dangerous place to become a popular pastor because it becomes celebrity. Everything's celebrity.
Yeah.
And he so knew that wasn't right. He actually, that's actually why we like the Anglican church, because usually there's a lot, it's like not about some charismatic figure.
Yeah.
It has more to do with the history and the liturgy and things like that. But you can imagine church in Hollywood.
Yeah.
So, and it was trendy. So he knew it was time to step down.
That's amazing, actually.
I think so too. I'm proud of him for that. It was hard because people didn't want him to, but he knew it was the right thing to do. And it was hard when you don't necessarily know what you're going to do. And that wasn't the best career move if you're in film, to be a pastor of a church for a few years.
Sure.
So when he stepped down, we were kind of waiting and wondering what was next. And we thought we probably shouldn't stay in LA, because if we go to church, it's not going to empower the same place. We need to take a break so that we empower the person that would be leading it. So we probably need to move just outside LA, because we go somewhere else, everybody will follow us. And so it was like being aware of that too.
Yeah.
And being sensitive to the health and the, growth of that small, cute community of artists there and homeless and all the people. And so we were like thinking maybe we should move to San Diego. We have a lot of friends down in San Diego because my husband done a lot of music videos. So good friends, especially at the time, Nickel Creek and Switchfoot. There were some good friends, and Brandon's mentor was down there, and we thought we have so many people we love down in San Diego. Maybe we should move there. And so we were going down to look at homes, and then we could still stay in touch with. And that day, we got a call that my mom was in the hospital. And my sister just said, you need to come. Something's really wrong with her. So I just got on a plane. I just left. And he said, I'll go to San Diego and look and let you know. So he went to go look at the homes, and I went to Waco. She was living in Waco at the time. It's not where we're from, but this is where she had been at the time. And I showed up, and when I got to the hospital, they let me know that they had done tests and she had stage 4 cancer, and it had metastasized in her bones. And she only had a few months left to live. They didn't really know how long, and she wasn't going to do chemo or anything. And they had to remove one of her kidneys and do a lot of operations because she had some pretty massive tumors. And so it just was like this, huge, like, oh my gosh. But because my husband had stepped down and we were in a place of wondering and waiting, this was why. This is why. He, on his way back from San Diego, heard an audible voice tell him, you need to move to Texas. And so his phone had died. I hadn't been able to get a hold of him all day. And when he got to his dad's house, he called me and he said, babe, I don't know what's going on, but I think we're supposed to move to Texas. And I just broke down crying. And I said, my mom has stage 4 cancer. He just knew. And he knew I would never ask him.
Yeah.
To like leave LA because he was going to relaunch his film career.
Right.
To move to Waco, Texas. Again, this is pre-fixer-upper. My husband at the time would call it pre-FU. So it was not a cool place to go back to. Like total, like being a pastor of a church and then moving to Waco is not the best way to relaunch your film career. And so I was like, what? And he's like, I heard. I know. I can't explain it. He's like, I knew on my way back after looking at the houses, this is not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be in Waco. I didn't, and it's just like clear. So I never came back. In 10 days, he and all the people at the church packed up our home, stuck it in a storage thing that was shipped to a unit, and he joined me. He drove down with our car and our bird and our chihuahua all the way from California to Waco, and we moved into the house with my mom with the kids, and we took care of her until she passed away. It was pretty crazy, right?
Yeah.
So it was just like one of those seasons. And while he was there, what was Brandon going to do with his sweet self in Waco, Texas? Well, he called up one of his musician friends that he knew, and his musician friend was friends with the theater professor at Baylor. And they would meet at this coffee shop and just for fun started writing a screenplay because our musician friend was we were friends. We had all gone to Baylor together. His name's Wes Cunningham. And he and Emily were some of our good friends in LA. And he got really frustrated at the record industry when it was changing and just very abruptly. He had some albums and had some success, but then had some bad, like a lot of our musician friends went through this, like just the industry changed so fast. And so he just like, I'm done. And they just up and left within a matter of a week from LA and moved to Waco.
Wow. And
so he knew him. And so when he showed up, he was like, Wes, help me. What am I doing here? And so Wes was like, I have all these songs that I never recorded. And they were songs of like hope and songs of kind of despair. And so they wrote a screenplay just for fun based on his songs, the theater, him and Wes. That ended up becoming the first feature film that my husband got funded by wealthy people in Waco.
Wow.
Isn't that wild?
It's amazing.
I know. So I think it's so interesting. You just never know why.
Yeah.
What also happened, which was interesting, is that a year before I had left, I had started an ethical fashion company called Raven and Lily. And it was born out of a group of volunteer designers at that church that we had started in Hollywood.
Okay.
And it had started off as a nonprofit. And during that time, it was a nonprofit. We had a tiny little storefront we shared in Echo Park with my friend Erin Ballard, who has an awesome frame store still there in Echo Park. And the idea was empowering women through design. And so we didn't know what the heck we were doing, but we felt like there was some way through the kind of justice work we had been doing as a church with marginalized women, we saw the trend of investing in women. You already know that's a big part of my heart. And so I was leading trips to go and spend time with organizations that I thought were doing incredible work among the poor. And I would bring people from Hollywood with me a lot to like places like India and Kenya and other places. And it was on these trips that there was this trend emerging where in Ethiopia and Kenya and Burundi and India, ministries and nonprofits were focusing on training women and empowering women because they saw if you empower a woman, she will reinvest it back in her family and community so much more than men. The statistics for sub-Saharan Africa are that 90% is invested back in compared to like 35% on average of men. So
It's incredible.
That makes a difference.
Yes.
If that's happening and you invest in women, then that can change the trajectory for a whole country over time, especially whole communities and families. And so a lot of people were realizing this, like this, it was during a time where Half the Sky book had come out. So there's just a lot of like awareness that women's empowerment makes a difference. And a lot of the groups that we were visiting specifically were training women in design-related skills. So because we were in Hollywood, we had so many creatives and so many designers, I was like, I got to connect my friends back in LA to use their like design background, their graphic skills, their jewelry making, their whatever they're doing with all these groups. So when I went back and would be like, so-and-so, could you volunteer? Like everybody said, yes, but you have to help connect it. And so over that happening again and again, I realized I was supposed to start something where I became the bridge between these two worlds and created Raven and Lily, which became an ethical fashion company, one of the first using that term, because that was not even a term in 2008. And I think had started being used in London by the Ethical Fashion Forum had started. It's now changed names, but nobody knew what I was talking about.
Yeah.
And so we just said we were like fair trade but wanting to do more modern design and didn't know what we were doing. So we had launched it and it was like taking off. Like we were all learning a lot and like had some designs that were doing really well, but it was a nonprofit kind of like R&D stage, like figuring it out. And when I moved to Waco, I was like, now what? And so everything just sort of went on hold. And I took care of my mom and volunteers, the designers, they just sort of ran it as volunteers, but it wasn't growing. Nothing was happening because we were in this transition. And when my mom passed away, Brandon and I decided we should stay in Texas and move to Austin. And when we moved to Austin, they sent all the Raven and Lily merch to me. And I just stuck it in my garage. And I was like, I don't know what I want to do with this. It was something I was really excited about, but I was mourning the death of my mom. And it took me a while. It took me like a good 8-9 months after that, close to a year. And then I realized I did want to continue it, but I wanted to move it into a for-profit social business model. But during the time when I was in Waco, there were people that would hear about what I had done and the little bit of stock that I had with me in Waco, they would come shop it.
Okay.
And it was one of those ladies that wanted to shop the stock that I had and like wanted me to like order some things with the artisans I was working with, invited me over for dinner one night with my husband so that I could share with her girls who were home from college. And granted, I was taking care of my mom who was dying of cancer, so I rarely left the house. My world had become very small during that time before we moved to Austin. And when we were at the dinner table, I was sharing about Raven and Lily and all of this. And then the husband was like, so Brandon, what do you do? And when Brandon said, well, this is what I, have done. I'm sort of on hold right now. He's like, well, you have any movie ideas now? And Brandon's like, actually, I just wrote a screenplay. And he's like, well, why aren't you making it to a movie? What do you need? Money? And Brandon was like, yeah. And he was like, I can get you that within a few weeks. They had raised the money. So this was like reality. Like it's an oversaturation of competition in Hollywood. And especially if you're independent, small budget. But once we got out of Hollywood and we're in Texas, this like world of people that wanted to invest in movies opened up. So my husband's done 4 feature films, all funded out of Texas since then. And now he's producing my first directorial debut, which is a documentary on artisans.
Yay.
But that all happened in Waco. And then when we moved to Austin is when I decided that I was ready after that pause to launch it. And it became like a more official ethical fashion social business, one of the first B Corp based in Texas that was both certified and registered. And I felt like Whole Foods came out of Austin. And when I was there, part of my motivation to doing this was that there was this like ethos in the air with this impact that this organic food movement had happened. And I thought there's room in this city for other imaginations of what something ethical could be. So I feel like a for-profit model of this, because I really only knew of like 10,000 Villages at the time, which is a nonprofit. So I was like, what if it's for profit and we do something that's like mainstream and like shares the story of these incredible women and brings beautiful things that, empower and not exploit people. So it was also one of the first social businesses based in Austin. And I say that lightly because I can't claim that officially, but I can say that I was a part of the first conversation about ethical fashion at South by Southwest.
Wow.
It was the same year Reformation had started. And so there were 2 core conversations happening. One was with them and one was with me. And then the next year was the first panel on ethical fashion. And a few years later is a whole division on social business and ethical fashion.
Wow.
And I don't really know what it is now, but I can say during that time, something was happening. And now there are massive incubators for social businesses based in Austin. Isn't that amazing?
That is.
So it was really fun to be. I like being on the front end of things
Yeah.
and imagining what can be when there's like limited resources and like boundaries like that. Oh, you can't do that. People saying like, oh, that's never been done. You can't do. But honestly, like this has never been done. So it could be anything.
Exactly.
That's like where I thrive. And
Yes.
so when I start getting like little ideas of what can be, it just starts to take off.
Yeah.
And so that was how that was birthed. And I was CEO of that company for 10 years. And we worked with 17 different artisan communities,
Wow.
I think in 9 countries, and was in every major top tier thing you could think about because it was something new.
Yeah.
And it was really exciting. And I think it like helped. I think it's fun to share, like even for you to share stories, because sometimes when you just share what you're doing, it sparks ideas and seeing things differently in other people that maybe then start something that was inspired by somebody. All artists are
Yes.
inspired by each other and other
Yes.
artists. So, but that was actually like the beginning of that kind of movement when this movie called True Cost came out. I don't know if you heard of this
Okay.
documentary. It's a documentary on ethical fashion that came out like in, I want to say 2015 or something.
Okay.
It's still relevant to watch today, but when they went on tour, the director came and we hosted a screening at the Alma Draft House together. And I feel like that documentary, coupled with my company, as well as Noonday Collection, which is another company in Austin that started at the same time, really like was the beginning of something that's happened all over the country. I know. Isn't it fun?
I love
It was already happening in Europe. We were just a little slower in the States. So like all my examples were based here in London. So we were like connecting to things in London. And then like now it's like more equal. But at the time,
Yeah.
definitely Europe was ahead of everything in the US and we were like catching up.
Wow.
But that was sort of my love of art, my love of women, and you know, all those things kind of coming together during that little season.
So cool. Well, I've heard so much about Raven and Lily, like in passing, via being on trips with you and stuff. And people are like, oh, I knew her from Raven and Lily days. And so I knew what Raven and Lily was, but to hear about its formation and how things came about and how it started and then restarted is really cool.
Most people don't know about that restart. And actually, Jessica from Noonday Collection, which is kind of known, it was during that time of in between. She bought all that stuff sitting in my garage.
Oh, wow.
That was part of how she started Noonday Collection.
That's amazing.
I know.
So cool.
It's funny.
It is funny. Yeah, life is funny. You've got so many like touch points of like, the world seems so small, you know, when you're.
I absolutely think the world seems small.
Yeah.
And every time we live somewhere and like our lives reconnect with people we haven't seen in 20 or 30 years, Brand and I are just so amazed. We've had so many people stay with us here in London when we lived in Portugal that we hadn't seen from like those college days or like our early 20s that would come across the world to come see us or stay with us. Was shocking, but also kind of fun to see like how life, you just never know. And if you can just say yes, you never know like how like people will continue to be intertwined into your path.
Absolutely. Keep saying yes, for sure. Thank you for listening to The Human Experience. Everyone has a story, and I'd love to hear yours. So be sure to check out the show notes for more information about how to stay in touch. Do good and love well.